Aloha, and welcome to Senate Spotlight. I'm Will Espero here at your state capitol with my two Senate colleagues on my left, Senator Maile Shimabukuro, welcome.
Thank you.
And Senator Michael Gabbard.
Aloha, Will. Mike to my friends. Michael's kind of formal, you know.
And all of us are from the west side, West Oahu.
Go West Side.
Now, this session was a real difficult session because this was the third session in a row where we had to look at a reduction of at least $1 billion in revenues. And adding it with the last three sessions, we had to have cuts of between 4 and 5 billion over the last 3 years. The financial part of it was very difficult. What else stood out for you, Senator Gabbard?
Well, as the chair of the Energy Environment Committee, Will, the most important thing to me is basically we are spending $4 to $6 billion every single year buying 40 million barrels of oil to light up our homes and gas our cars and gas our jets. And this does not make any sense to me. Everyone that I've talked to is, all the energy experts are just basically saying we need to be more aggressive and getting up more PV systems up on our roofs, expanding geothermal. There are some wind projects that are being discussed. And a little bit of controversy on those items right now, but really it's just helping homeowners and businesses, for myself, make it so they can handle the upfront costs. The biggest obstacle right now is the upfront costs. And so as far as legislation, we were thankful that the governor signed into law House Bill 1520, which basically means you'll be able to put some energy efficiency appliances in your home or that PV system up on your roof and pay it back on your electric bill. It's a study right now, it's an investigation. But other states are doing it, and it's really a great bill. The other one was also, we call it the Sunrun bill. It allows companies to come into Hawaii and lease these PV systems. Instead of the homeowner buying them, these guys, they lease them, and they do all the maintenance, and you get like a 30% reduction in your electric bill. So to me, as far as, given those budget shortfalls that we have, yes, it's just really important. You know, we have all the sun, wind, ocean thermal, geothermal, wave energy possible, the best place on the planet right here. So we need to keep that $4 to $6 billion every year home in our economy for our jobs, our green jobs, et cetera.
Right.
Don't get me going. I could go all night on this.
No, that will certainly be the next issue in the next session for the next 5 sessions in terms of energy sustainability. Now, Maile, you are the vice chair of the Judiciary Committee.
Yes.
And that is usually quite a busy committee.
Yes. I really, it was wonderful. Judiciary and labor combined. And so it was a great experience. You know, I was happy that we got, you know, bills through that. The one bill I was most excited about personally was SB 217, which was a bill that was really quite revolutionary because it would say that if you are a victim of child sex abuse, that you would have no statute of limits to bring a civil suit against your perpetrator, against the perpetrator. Unfortunately, the bill was vetoed.
Yes.
But yeah, controversial, but it was, you know, something that I want to thank, you know, really Chair He and Chair Gil Keith Agaran on the House that really, you know, pushed to get it through. And it was modeled after legislation in Delaware, which did withstand constitutional challenge. And so, you know, the advocates we're not going to give up, you know, and there's another version of the bill, luckily, that the AG's office did support. It was the House Draft 1 that came out of Chair Mizuno's committee. And that bill is modeled after legislation in California, which it has an 8-year statute of limits from the time the person either turns 18 or discovers the abuse, like if it was a repressed memory.
8 years.
Yeah, 8 years. The bill we had passed, 217, was no limit.
Is that the reason why the governor vetoed the bill?
Yeah, the governor felt that it would be a due process issue for the accused defendants. You know, but of course, on the other end of it, you know, we really felt that for someone to even bring this type of lawsuit, I mean, you have to have a lot of proof. Mm-hmm. I mean, the burden is obviously on the plaintiff. And if you're talking about something that happened when you were a child and you're now, say, 40 years old, I mean, you know, you're going to have documented, you know, proof. And so, that's why the case in Delaware, that was challenged, the court did feel that the defendant was not prejudiced because the evidence was so strong, So, yeah, it's a very tough issue, but I think that was the thing I was most excited about for me this past session that came out of Judiciary Committee.
Very good. Now, I sat in at one of your hearings, Mike, on geothermal, and that was a very interesting educational hearing, and it seemed like many of the people there seem to be in support of geothermal now versus maybe another point in time where they may not have been. What did you come away with from that meeting?
Well, it was a very important meeting because, as you say, Will, the history behind geothermal in Hawaii, it actually goes back to 1881 when King Kalakaua went to New York City and met with Thomas Edison.
Right.
And they sat down and had this discussion, and the king at that time said, "Look, why don't we connect the islands by cables and start getting that electricity from the volcanoes?" And so there's a long, very actually colorful history in addition to that. There were some problems that happened back in the 80s when the state put its first pilot project, a 3-megawatt pilot project there, and mistakes were made. I mean, it was an open-ended system where all the sulfur went out into the community and stunk and everybody's walking around. And so from the very beginning, there was this negative response from the community. Then in the 90s when the present Ormat company came in, Israeli-based company, they did the drilling in the wells, and so there were all these protests. And the main problem was that they did not sit down and talk story with the Hawaiians and get their, and so the Hawaiians were very offended. But as far as the hearing, what I was happy to hear was that there seems to be a shift, a transition amongst the host culture in terms of, rather than seeing Madame Pele's, what I call Madame Pele's breast milk, that geothermal energy, as a bad thing, but seeing it as nourishing all of our islands and helping us get us off of foreign oil. It just doesn't make sense. And the thing that people should understand is that this geothermal energy, it's baseline energy. It's 24/7, 365 days a year. Unlike the sun, when it gets covered by clouds, that affects your PV system. And also when the wind's not blowing, those wind turbines are not turning. So this is something that I feel in the future, it may be 10 or 20 years down the road, but eventually that we could connect all the islands with cables and share all of our energy resources and help to levelize our rates. It's criminal that the people who live in Hana are paying $6 a gallon for gas, and that people are paying twice what we pay for Oahu on these neighbor islands. It's criminal.
Does HECO support it?
Yes.
Okay. So
yeah.
They
well,
then.
Yeah, it was interesting at the hearing, Maile, because they were there, and it was an info briefing, in that the public was not allowed to weigh in on it. But I haven't gotten any direct comments from them. But the way it looked, some of the energy experts that talked to me afterwards, they just said, "Wow, you talk about a game changer."
Yeah.
So it's
Wow.
This could be huge.
And I asked the question.
And you were there, Senator. What did you
Yes.
think, Senator Espero?
Well, I asked, could geothermal be up to 100% or the majority of the energy on the Big Island in the future? And the answer to that was yes, if you remember that.
Exciting.
And then as Mike said, with possible cables one day, and this is down the road definitely,
Right.
connecting all the islands so we could share and wean ourselves off that fossil fuel.
Yeah. Well, the Big Island, it's interesting, Will, because they're at 31% clean renewable now.
Yes.
They lead all the islands. And so there's more than enough
Right.
energy there to handle them, plus to share that wealth with the rest of the islands, that energy wealth.
Gee,
Now,
I wonder if we could export energy.
Yeah.
We could bring some revenue
Yeah.
into our state.
Maybe one day.
Yeah.
Now on our side, UH West Oahu is the big project for the Leeward Coast, Waianae, Kapolei Beach. That's going to be a game changer in West Oahu. Is that right, Maile?
Oh, yes. I mean, there's so many people that I hear from all the time that say the big problem, in rural places like Waianae, and I'm sure in your communities too, is that we don't have enough homegrown professionals. And so there's a shortage of teachers, a shortage of doctors, shortage of dentists, you name it. And that's why we have this, high teacher turnover, out in Waianae. That's the thing you always hear. The teachers come, they get recruited from town or from the mainland, and they last 2 years and then they're gone. And I know that from experience, firsthand, my sister she got her master's in education at UH. And she told me that, there's no way she could have done it if she didn't have, all of us supporting her, her husband, the access to the car, the income, because she lives in Waianae, but when she had to do a practicum, it was at Kalani High School,
Wow.
or Castle, or something on the windward side. And not to mention I have to go to UH Manoa every day. And so for, if you're someone who's a single mom in Waianae, low income, you just forget it. You'd say, but now if we have something at Kapolei,
Right.
where you can, catch the bus and get on there and be home in time to feed your kids, I mean, it's going to make all the difference. So I'm very, very excited, very supportive of the project.
Now, which one of you service Ko'olina? Is it
Me.
Mike or
Well, part of it. Actually, sorry, we
it's
split it. That's right, we split it.
I have 1/3 basically to the harbor. That's my western boundary,
Okay.
and Maile has from the harbor all the way out to the west.
Because we've got a big project out there with Disney and Aulani, which will be opening up and providing 1,000 jobs. Is that right?
Yeah. And let me just add one thing when you're talking about UH West Oahu.
Yes.
It's a project, as you know well, that has been a sore spot in our community for many years. The first appropriation from the legislature, $300,000 for planning, was in 1966. That was 1966. So 46 years later, it's actually going to open its doors with the first 5 buildings. And when you're driving by, every day I drive by and I look over there, and they've almost had the roof up on one of the classroom buildings. But they're going to open in the fall of 2012, and that's going to have a huge impact, not only for jobs, as you mentioned, Will, but as we all know, the traffic congestion.
Right.
And this has not hit people yet. What it's going to mean is that we know that when Manoa is in session, the traffic is horrible on H1. All right? So once UH West Oahu opens, folks who live on the Waianae Coast, who live at North Shore, Central Oahu, even Pearl City and Aiea, why go to Manoa? Turn around and go the opposite way, freeing up H1. So it's going to be huge. People are still, like Maile said, we're very excited about this thing, especially after such a long wait. And yeah, it's cool. Good stuff.
Now, have either of you seen the new Disney resort or hotel yet?
I've driven by it, several times. Yeah, and it's very, I think people are already trying to apply there for jobs.
Yes.
I'm sure they're going to get flooded with applications.
I think they're opening, is it October or fall?
August 29th.
August 29th.
Yep.
Right around the corner.
I was there playing tennis at the Hilani and looking over at the building. And what I liked about the architecture was that apparently that they were very made sure that it was in line with Hawaiian. The motif is really nice.
Mm-hmm.
You can see it, as you're coming up from Honakahala, you can see it over on the left, and it's very unique.
Yeah.
So I think it's
earthy colors.
Yeah, with the canoe and just super.
Now, what are the big issues on the Waianae Coast nowadays?
Well, I'm glad you're asking. One of the things I wanted to highlight is flooding.
Okay.
And so we're going to be having a meeting. We're looking at sometime late September with Senator Inoi's office, and I brought some photos because there's some severe damage in Pa'akea Road area, Lulu'ule Valley that stretches across both District 44 and District 45, the House districts. And so luckily we're able to get money into the budget, the West Side legislators. There's various, there's a $2 million appropriation for Lulu'ule Valley, $1 million for flooding in Makaha area, and $8 million for DOT because Farrington Highway floods a lot also. So that's one thing I'm excited to report. I'll be getting to community. It's probably going to be September 29th we're looking at, Maile Elementary. So that's a big issue. I don't know if that was a big thing for you folks, if you got natural disasters in your area also.
Ewa Beach gets some flooding, but not as bad as what I've seen on television
Yeah,
in the
it's
Waianae
severe.
Coast.
I mean, there was, those pictures show. So I'm really excited. I really appreciate that the feds are interested in trying to help. So it'll be a good meeting.
And what's the big issue in the Kapolei, Ko'olina, Kalailoa region?
Well, there's just again, going back to the excitement factor, after 30 years ago when the planners decided that when Honolulu was built out that they were, it was all going to take place out in West, and we all know this. It's the quote-unquote the second city or the new city, whatever you want to call it. It's finally happening.
Right.
And people are excited about it. As you know, Will and I were at the groundbreaking and blessing for the FBI facility in Kalaeloa, where I live, and it's right there at the four-way stop, and it's an incredible project, and the way it's going to be like 200 agents, 130 agents plus staff, and their families are going to be living in that area. And after Kalaeloa, after Barbers Point closed in 1999, it's been kind of like a ghost town there. So I really think that's going to be the anchor for small businesses moving in there, and so that's one exciting thing.
Right.
We mentioned UH West Oahu. You know, it's just, you know, Target's there now, and Costco's there now. So all the things that are finally happening. The roads are being built. The North-South Road, as you know, that was another 35-year project taken to complete. So the sense I get when I'm talking to folks down at Costco or Safeway or whatever is that you know, there's just such a difference than when I first ran for office back in 2006. It's just kind of like, yeah, what's next, Senator? You know, kind of like, and I certainly cannot take credit for you know, we all work together, and which brings up another thing, Will. I think that's one thing that I've noticed amongst our colleagues. They realize that we do live in the fastest growing area. The West Side is the fastest growing area, right?
Yes.
And therefore, our colleagues have been able to join us in stepping up to the plate with that $48 million for UH West Oahu. In Kapolei, we're excited about Kapolei 2 Elementary School, right across from the high school. It's the only school that got funding for construction this last session, $40 million to build a brand new school. New school, and I know you can relate to that because you were able to.
Well, I'm happy to announce that yes, we had our blessing for Eva Mackay Middle School, which is the probably most environmentally sound middle school in the state.
Really?
And
exciting.
we had a blessing. This is the first year it's opened, and it's just a gem.
Yeah.
It really epitomizes what our schools should look like in the future. And you know, we're fortunate because as we're building these new schools, the students and the teachers that are going to be moving into them will get state-of-the-art, you know, air conditioning, computers, etc. And sometimes we hear from other schools that aren't happy with that, but I mean, that's the way it should be at this time. And we are putting money in repair and maintenance in other areas, so schools that are in need are also not forgotten and taken care of.
Right.
Now, are you working on any legislation for next year?
You know, I'm already looking at, you know, at some things. You know, one issue that's really big for our community is our beaches, you know. And, you know, I have actually a picture of, you know, we're going to be working with the city on August 22nd at Makaha Surfing Beach.
Okay.
Yeah, so you see a lot of the regular, you know, the Kealanas there, you know, got Bunky Bakudas who works with them a lot, people from the city, people from the state, and sand, and the issue of sand erosion is really big for beach communities. And so on August 22nd, city's going to come out and push sand towards Kaena Point direction. And this is something that really has been long overdue and needs to happen because without it, the beach erodes to the point of almost endangering the public. You know, the cars are about to fall over, in, you know, in the parking lot. And in addition to continue working with the city on that, I tried to get a bill through a couple years ago, and I'm going to try again, to really look at the issue of sand theft. Because where I live, right across near Pokai Bay Street, you know, it's a regular occurrence to see people pull up with their trucks, you know, and shovels and start to load sand into their cars. And they're taking it, I don't know if they're doing for sandbox, for making, you know, concrete, that kind of thing. But I think people might not realize that this is really putting all of us at jeopardy because you're taking sand away, you know, erosion's going to happen, and with global warming, it's going to speed up the process of us all being underwater. We
don't have any laws against that now?
The law that we have now says that a person could take a gallon a day from the beach.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and I think that I want to do away with that and just say that you just can't take sand, you know, period, because that gallon a day makes it kind of vague and gray, and so people can say, oh, I was just taking my gallon, you know, and even a gallon a day. If we all were taking a gallon a day, that would be way too much.
Right.
So I think that it needs to be looked at again, and so I'm going to try to push for that. It's one thing.
And Mike, are you looking at any energy-related or other bills?
Well, we're hoping, as I mentioned before, the on-bill financing, that's a study now, we're hoping to actually get that study over quickly so we can implement it. And there's another one that's at the federal level that we had introduced a couple years ago called Property Assessed Clean Energy, or PACE. And that one would allow you to pay for that PV system or any other energy efficiency system that you want to put in your home or business, to pay for it on your mortgage, on your monthly bill, your property taxes, right? Unfortunately, it's being held up at the federal level right now, and they're actively trying to get that. So that again will help people with that upfront cost and getting that PV system up on their roof. The statewide average for electricity bills monthly is $200 a month. When you have that PV system up there, you're paying $18 a month. There are 267,000 single-family dwelling homes in the state of Hawaii. Only 5,000 have a PV system up on your roof. And people, I'm hoping that we need to continue working with the Blue Planet Foundation, the Sierra Club, and others. The state, we need to partner with the private sector and with the media to keep getting that word out that you don't have to pay. You know, I talk to people in Makakila who pay like $400 a month for their electric bill. And when I tell them about this, because there are federal tax credits, state tax credits, and they say, where do I sign up? You know, so we need to keep on increasing public awareness as to how much you can actually save once you get that system up on your roof. So I'll continue to work on that and look at any kind of bills, any other kind of legislation that will help us along. Geothermal as well. We may need to look at some kind of enabling legislation to further that project along as well. But yeah.
Now the city.
How about yourself, Will?
Yes. What about you?
Well, I'm working with the administration on some prison and reentry issues. Recently, as you know, the governor and the legislature brought in a group from CSG, the Council of State Government, doing justice reinvestment. And they're looking at our judiciary and our public safety departments, looking at records and data to see how our judiciary and correction system is working, and whether there are ways that we can improve it and possibly even divert monies from incarceration to more community-based programming that is actually helpful and working and best practice type, because so often we've seen the revolving door issue. When someone is arrested, for example, they'll say 17 arrests and 10 convictions, or 40 arrests and 20 convictions. So you wonder, if someone is a career criminal, why aren't we helping them or giving them the skills and tools so they can stop? And then, of course, with the mainland prisoners, that's another big issue, working with the administration, trying to get the 1,600 inmates that are now on the mainland, that we're spending about $45 million per year. And if we could take that money and spend it locally versus in Arizona, then that would be a big economy booster as well. But let's talk a little about transportation too. We've got about 4 minutes left.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay,
time goes quite fast when you're having fun. But the city's real close. This is the closest they've ever been with the rail project. And there's some lawsuits out there still, which are expected. But Maile, do you think this might be the time for rail for West Oahu and our island?
You know, it's a tough, I support mass transit. I support anything. I'm a bus rider. You know, I love the bus. Anything that can help get people out of their cars and reduce our traffic problem, you know, I think we got to support, you know. So I'm glad to see that this is finally, you know, hopefully coming to fruition.
Yes.
I know that there's issues about the format, and you know, I am concerned that we do the most cost-efficient manner. And so, you know, but I support the concept. You know? Yeah, I support having mass transit of some form or another.
And Kapolei is going to be ground zero for the first phase.
Absolutely. That first 20-mile segment begins in East Kapolei. And so I think, again, we need to really kind of take an aerial view of big picture view of what's happening out there on the west side. And that is, along with the rail and UH West Oahu, is some of the homes that are being built. These guys are all Department of Hawaiian Homelands. They have a number of projects where they just finished Kanahili, which is 400 homes there. Each of those new homes has a portal for an electric car in their garage. How's that for forward thinking? Yeah, yeah. So this is happening at such breakneck speed, and there's another 1,000 units of the another homestead coming in, and I think having UHOS to Oahu, Department of Hawaiian Homelands, and any of the other developers, Horton Schuler has a project that's being discussed now.
Right.
They're all working together, and then with the rail being there, to look at sustainability, transit-oriented development, make it so that lots of parks, walkways, bikeways, so people don't have to get in their cars every time they want to go someplace. So it's kind of an exciting thing to see, but we have to step back and not do this all the time, but just sit back and talk to the people who live there and start discussing on how we think the best way it's going to be working. Right. It's going to work.
And one of the bills that we passed this year was a change in the Board of Education structure. Before they were elected, and now they are appointed by the governor, and we have now a new appointed board. In the minute that we have left over, what would you do to change education if you can implement something today, Maile?
Oh, well, I have a nice picture of some school kids from Maile Elementary School, and I can just bring it up there. But I'm actually, one thing we're looking at, since Hawaiians are so prevalent in our community, is increasing the access to Hawaiian language education. Okay. So we're having a meeting on July 22nd at Nanakuli High School to talk about bringing 7th and 8th grade Hawaiian language classes. Just to make it easier for kids to go all the way from elementary school and transition to high school. That piece is missing right now.
Okay. And Mike, what's your piece to improve education or help our students?
Right now, helping more at-risk students. I had some students that came in from Minnesota. We had Dog Chapman that did a surprise visit. I'm in favor of the appointed board. I think it's going to work fine. And I think we just need to, again, we need to be constantly aware, instead of just talking about improving education, but paying teachers what they're worth, and so that they'll stay, what you mentioned earlier, Mike. That's what we need to do. Right.
And if I had to choose something for education our students, it would be to make financial literacy and internet instruction mandatory. Because I see these two areas that will certainly be useful and needed beyond their high school years, and areas that need to be stressed more, because I think they are lacking when it comes to dealing with your personal finances, and then the pitfalls of the internet as well as the positives. But with that, my colleagues in the Senate, Maile Shimabukuro and Mike Gabbard from West Oahu, both of you, thank you for joining me on Senate Spotlight. I'm Will Espero. We'll see you next time. Thank you for watching here from your state capital. Aloha.
Wow.